just this week, the AP came out with a report about the gap between the super rich in the world and the poorest half of the global population. This is just stunning. And in some respects, well, all right, why don't you just tell the results of the story, and then.
I mean, it's one sentence, right? Oxfam says 8 men as rich as half of the world. That's the main takeaway. There's no elaboration.
It is crazy. Bill Gates, Michael Bloomberg, 6 others owning as much wealth as 3.6 billion people in the world. Now, we also had this week, we saw at least a couple of billionaires who are in hearings over the past 2 weeks for Trump's administration. But this is unbelievable. They presented their findings at the Swiss ski resort of Davos.
I mean, but that's kind of part of what is really interesting and troubling in some respects about how even sometimes these studies are framed. So, they quote Mark Lawson, who's an Oxfam policy advisor, and, doing God's work. No criticism of Oxfam or him. And I understand where he's unveiling the results and everything else. But he talked, he urged billionaires to quote unquote do the right thing, and follow Bill Gates in paying their taxes. And the thing is that when you have a problem that is this structural and really does reveal the inherent dangers of capitalism unchecked, because this is what it leads to. If you don't check capitalism, you lead to market monopolies and you lead to massive inequalities.
And
this is where
political
we go.
inequalities.
And
you go from a plutonomy to a plutocracy.
To a plutocracy, and it is not dependent on the personal ethics of any of these people. I mean, we can have a conversation where we can say, I would prefer that, Warren Buffett be a billionaire than Betsy DeVos. That is no policy answers come from personal moral assessments or even public performance assessments of these people.
And the amazing thing is that what's sort of shocking is that the report is reported to these billionaires as if it's really up to your largesse.
Yes.
Right? They are so powerful that it's almost the sort of subtext of this is there's no point in the rest of us debating this because it's really going to come down, and this is part of the problem. This is indicative of the problem, that at the end of the day, it's really up to you. I mean, this is why, right? I mean, fundamentally, the idea of taxation as a means in which to promote equality is not enough. There has to be structural, like you say, structures put in place in societies to prevent the accumulation of this type of wealth. I mean, that is, and it's not, I'm not saying that there needs to be a law that says you can't earn past X amount of dollars. But I think there has to be laws that prevent monopolies, that prevent predatory practices, that tax these gains before they can multiply in such a fashion to prevent something like this amount of disparity. The idea that you've got 3.6 billion people who own the same wealth as 8 is just obscene, and nobody can think this is a good idea.
It's obscene. Well, that's the other problem that we're in right now, right? Is that I think that we're seeing, just as there's been sort of this transition in politics of kind of if you think of the 90s, the sort of soft, gauzy kind of neoliberalism of people like Bill Clinton and Tony Blair, even though it wasn't all that soft and in practice. But we see differences, and this is maybe where some of those moral and policy differences do matter, of, people who hold a obscene and illogical amount of resources and money, who at least can kind of abstractly acknowledge and engage with the problem. Now we have, the empowerment of the Peter Thiels of the world, who would be the only people listening to this who would say it's completely not a problem. this is actually right, and we should just have like a new postmodern form of like, what was it, the great chain of being from feudalism. There's a natural descending order of hierarchy and right and good, and now it's not about birth, although actually functionally it is. It's just about money and assets, and if you have it, you're good.
And I mean, that plays out in a couple of different ways. There was a piece in the New York Times about women who voted for Trump in their own words, and we don't have too much time to go through it, but
I bet they were beautiful words.
Yeah, one woman, a 48-year-old woman, said, Trump's not a perfect man by any means. He kind of reminds me of my ex-husband. I think he's a really good man deep down. This guy has such potential, and I truly believe he cares about our country and wants to help everyone. Now, that to me is a function of someone who has been taught over and over again, primarily by the Republican Party, but broadly speaking, our society, that having money equals being morally righteous.
Right.
Because there is no piece of evidence that one could point to, objectively speaking, saying that Donald Trump deep down is a good man.
That's ironically, Donald Trump is one of the most transparent, not only people, just things we have in modern life.
He
is a horrible deep
from
down
charities.
Yes.
He has been accused of rape. He has been accused of assault. He's been accused by over a dozen women now of molestation. He has been accused by the Justice Department and found guilty of racial discrimination. I mean, I could go on and on. Short of actually killing anybody, I don't see how he could be perceived as a great man deep down inside, unless you're looking at wealth. But we've got to take a break. We'll be back in the next hour to talk about some of the also less than great men that Donald Trump has nominated to be in his cabinet. We get a quick break. Sam Seder, Ring of Fire Radio. I'm here with Michael Brooks from The Majority Report. We'll be back in the next hour.